Burrow is buried. Have the Bengals buried Joe Burrow beyond recovery?
Say that again 5 times fast. Bengals buried Burrow beyond recovery.
Burrow is buried. Have the Bengals buried Joe Burrow beyond recovery? Joe has had some setbacks with injuries. Yeah. Yes. He has had some horrific O-lines. And he's had some bad defenses. Yet continues to show us he is a top 3 pure passer in this game right now. And one of the most accurate passers in the game. He also has 2 legit-ass wide receivers. Let's not forget about it. And it takes 3 to tango, they say, in the NFL. He also has a very good tight end. Got rid of Mixon and has still had one of his best years to date. But again, this team missed the playoffs, Smitty, and now we'll be wondering, what if? What if they win those 2 games in Baltimore? What if they beat that Kansas City Chiefs team in Kansas City that they had won, they had beat? Smitty, Joe has been to a Super Bowl already, and that is what Lamar and Josh are chasing. Can one of these guys do it now that Joe is out, sitting at home in Acapulco, in, Bali, wherever Joe is? What is next for the Bengals, Smitty, is my question to you real quick. I think they have buried him in a sense, but I love the fact that he keeps showing up, playing, regardless if he's hurt, if he's injured, he tries to go. But half of it's Joe Burrow being injured, half of it's the organization not shoring up the O-line, not shoring up that defense, because we've seen other teams do it in a cap-friendly environment, Smitty. The Chiefs do it every year. The 49ers have been doing it. The Rams did it to win a Super Bowl against that Burrow-led Bengals team. Why can't the Bengals figure it out? That's the topic I want to talk about just for a couple minutes before we dive into the poll question.
Well, listen, man, a couple things here. One, I know it's still early, and I might be, too soon on this, but as of right now, based upon the current information that we have, it looks like Joe Burrow is going to end up being the modern-day Dan Marino or Phillip Rivers or whatever really good to great quarterback that you watch, who was really good, got all these numbers, got all these stats, but for whatever reason, just didn't have the support, the team, the organization, whatever, to actually win. The Bengals, as an organization, for years has been bad. Even you go back to the T.J. Houshmandzadeh, Chad Ochocinco days as well. Just didn't have the full support. You always heard these crazy stories about how cheap the owner was when it came to spending money, taking care of their players and the facilities, etc. And I believe they've had the same ownership for till now. They still have it. So I thought you were seeing a lot of the same things. I posed this question the other day, and I said, listen, whatever era, whether it's the 90s, the 80s, the early 2000s, whatever era you grew up, when you looked at those great quarterbacks of that era, you never was worried about them missing the playoffs. You never was worried about Aikman missing the playoffs, Joe Montana missing the playoffs, Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees. If they were healthy, they were making the playoffs. The fact that Burrow has been so good, especially this particular season, some people have him in the MVP conversation, and they're not in the playoffs, is a problem. I saw that stat there. It was like a quote, I think, on that graphic that J.J. Watt was responding to about saying, this blows my mind. The Bengals currently have the NFL leader in pass yards, reception yards, and sacks, and they missed the playoffs. Like, that's insane to think about that. It doesn't even really make sense. If you told me before the season that they would lead in those categories, there's no way in hell I would say they're missing the playoffs. So something has to change, because as a fan of Burrow, it's a shame to not see this talent in the playoffs. It's a shame we can't see Jamar Chase, arguably the best receiver in the league, between him and Justin, not in the playoffs. And what do they do to move forward? I mean, shit, I don't know. They need to get that defense better. So hopefully in the draft, they get some guys who they feel like can beef up the defense immediately. But beyond the draft, they need to spend some actual money in free agency and get some guys who can come up there and be elite on the defensive end and really really solidify that side. I said it before, and I don't know where they get the money from or how they can restructure it, but Joe Burrow has made it clear he wants T. Higgins on his team. He wants to keep his weapons. He wants that, there's nothing like having 2 great wide receiver options, because you can't double both, because, you're leaving guys open. So I just feel like, man, I'm concerned that he may be buried, because I don't think they're going to play T. Higgins. I don't trust that they're going to solidify that defense, because they haven't done that to this point. So it's just the Bengals are going to bangle. And now I'm looking back to them. That's my last little statement. I wonder if the Super Bowl that they went to was just a fluke. And I'm not saying it to damage, deter like Joe Burrow's greatness. I'm a Joe Burrow fan, but just a fluke for the organization, a fluke year, a fluke like things just had to everything went you had to go right for him because I don't see him getting back in the Super Bowl anytime soon as is.
Let me break down some facts for everybody out there that's listening. First of all, I take Burrow 1,000 days over Mahomes. Out of 1,000 days, I take Burrow every day, all day over Mahomes. That's me, number one. Number two, we can sit here and talk about Burrow on this side and not talk about Mahomes on the other side, meaning this. Mahomes has benefited from solely a great defense the last 2 years that nobody wants to talk about. If you take the Chiefs defense and you put it in Cincinnati, Cincinnati is who we're talking about today, not Kansas City. Let's fucking be clear here. Burrow had all that on offense, to your point. All these things were supposed to be playoff worthy. Well, if I flip the script and go over to Kansas City, to Burrowhead, and I go, hey, you have no offensive weapons. All this talk about Mahomes having no offense. Guess what? Because they have the best defense. So yes, Smitty, defense matters. It doesn't matter how many pretty toys you have on offense if you have to score 50 a game. Their defense is horrific. But on the Chiefs side, their defense is unbelievably good. Now let's talk about Hendrickson leading the NFL in sacks. He has no other counterpart on the other side. The D-line is horrific. He's done this without any other pass rusher on that front. Another reason why their defense is so bad and how good he's been. But if you look at Kansas City, when you have Chris Jones and these other guys that are contributing to take pressure off the back row, which suffers in Cincinnati because they get no pass rush, and they have one guy who got 17 and a half sacks that leads the league and nobody else, it's really easy for me to game plan against that type of defense, Smitty. There's two things, Smitty. I either run at Henderson or run away from him. Yeah. It's real simple. Whatever you want to talk about. They have no other help on defense. The offense can be as great as you want, but you can't stop a cold butt naked in Alaska, then you're going to be having a problem. Cincinnati solely has an issue on defense, and that is a organizational failure and a head coaching failure. When you're a head coach OC and are worried about pretty things that glitter and flash and all this, and you're worried about Jamar Chase holding out in preseason and T. Higgins contract negotiations, you're not worried about what's on defense that wins you games. And that is a head coaching failure because you're an OC mentality offensive play calling guy in Zach Taylor who only wants to score points. But now, guess what? They've said Zach's coming back. And what does Zach do? He fires his DC. So, of course, you're going to fire the DC. And now we have a problem in Cincinnati. I don't believe is repairable because Joe Burrow continues to age. And now that team needs too many parts to become elite again. And that 1 year that they went to a Super Bowl, why don't you guys go look at their defense? Pretty fucking legit. Their defense was really, really good in Cincinnati. They had fucking 2 big-time pass rushers, 2 big-time D tackles, 2 legitimate linebackers, and 2 guys in the back row that can cover your 1 and 2. They don't have any of that this year in the Super Bowl or in the NFL. And that is why that game was close against the Rams, who had an unbelievable offense headed into that Super Bowl. Right. Because if you remember, that game was close.
It was.
So nobody wants to talk about the facts, and that's the problem.
I think you laid out a lot of truths right there. I guess my only pushback or just different angle or whatever is that I hear all that, but the all-time greats still figure it out. I remember watching Peyton Manning a lot of years.
Hold up. I'm glad you mentioned Peyton Manning because let's be honest, you mentioned this to me. You've thrown this back at me. I talked to you about Lamar Jackson not winning. Your excuse is, whoa. Peyton Manning had all these years. So is it not the same for Joe Burrow? Peyton Manning hasn't won a Super Bowl yet either. Joe Burrow is actually ahead of Peyton Manning. He actually went to one before Peyton Manning.
Yeah, no, you're right. You know, it's not like over. I'm not like saying it's a wrap. It's over. I'm just saying.
But you said it earlier. You said it's kind of he missed the window. I'm like, well, hold on. Peyton Manning didn't do nothing for 8 years.
No, that's fair. So, I think it's more so I don't trust the Bengals organization, though. And if he's gonna be there, which I think he will be, it's just hard for me to really believe and fully trust in the organization is going to do right by him. You know what I'm saying? The reason I bring up Peyton Manning, though, is for a lot of years, the coach didn't have like a great defense. We had like names on there, but if you look at like where we ranked the top defenses, we didn't always have like the great defenses. And Peyton Manning still made the playoffs at least. Now, the year we won the Super Bowl, our defense fucking balled out in the playoffs, and that's what got us over the hump. But in terms of this regular season, we didn't have to worry about getting to the playoffs. So I still got to put a little bit of blame towards Joe Burrow, because at the end of the day, the difference between him and Mahomes, and I get why you said you would pick Burrow over Mahomes. I understand what you're saying. Although I disagree, though, is because Mahomes figures out a way to win. Even in those close games when it's late in the game and maybe defense, took their foot off the gas, or whatever the case may be, Mahomes finds a way to win. He has the it factor. Not saying Burrow does not have it. I just don't think he has to the same degree, same level as a Patrick Mahomes. So that's my difference between him and Mahomes.
I don't agree with that, because I've also seen Chad Henne be plugged in there and figure a way to win in Kansas City.
For a game. I mean,
Smitty, they don't win that game. Smitty, if they don't win that game, they're not in the fucking Super Bowl.
I get it. It's important. I'm just saying, but it's a game, though. I'm saying we see Mahomes.
And guess what? Guess who's in the Super Bowl? Or guess who's playing in this title game? The Jags. And now Peterson probably has a job, and we're sitting here talking about Sunshine as being a guy that, he got to a Super Bowl, or he got to an AFC title game already. Because remember, the Jaguars were this close away that year. Like, people don't want to talk about that. So, like, it's just very, very finite in how all this pieces to the puzzle works in the NFL, because it's so hard to win. And I'm going to be honest, you take fucking Burrow out of Cincinnati, they're a one-team win team.
For sure.
Kansas City, you put in Carson Wentz or whatever, they're still a 10. They're still a 10-win team, I'm saying, at least.
I disagree.
Yeah. With that defense, Smitty, they're still a 10-win team.
8, 9.
But you see my point. It's not.
But listen, last thing, the Lions defense has been abysmal this year, but they just outscore you. So my point is, I hear what you're saying. With everything we're saying right now, everything you said is great. It's true.
That's cap.
But the greats still find a way to win, though. You got to get
the Lions defense being abysmal. The Lions defense abysmal is cap. The Lions defense was pretty fucking good for most of this year. And when they have to play big-time teams like the Minnesota Vikings for a title the other day, their defense showed up.
That's a game.
That's why their defensive coordinator is getting head coaching interviews right now. I'm just telling you, their defense is pretty fucking good, and they've been riddled with injury. They've been as riddled as the Niners and the Rams. So, like, I'll be honest, their defense is still pretty fucking good.